going over the straight punches. Straight punches are basically you're jabbing across, but we refer to them in two different ways because of the mindset that we have behind them. Jabbing across simply means that you throw a jab, you throw a cross, and that is it. It's a two-punch combination. Straight punches is the same concept, but it's almost like a machine gun going up. There is no stopping, so it just continues as a jab and a cross and a jab and a cross and a jab and a cross. The idea is that we want to be able to overwhelm. So as far as proper movement, we all move a little bit differently. We have different body physiques, different restrictions. So stick to the key points, make it your own. Okay? As far as any technique, the technique is only perfect in the way that it works for you, okay? Not the way that I want you to do it. So that being said, basic key movements behind the jab is engaging the hips, engaging the feet, to engage the shoulders, to engage the punch. So we have 4 steps in a sense. So from here, I need to be able to move my hip, which actually releases the movement of my foot and gives me a little bit more of a drive. So generally, yes, drive with the feet to be able to create more power into the punches. But if I move my foot first, it looks a little bit weird and it feels a little bit uncomfortable as well. So to move my foot, to then move my hip, it also becomes very easily to see. So my attacker will know what I'm doing. So engaging hip first allows me to distribute the movement or the energy between both foot and shoulder at the same time. So now I'm creating a drive, but think of it as pressure, okay? If I have the floor and the ceiling pressing down from both ends and my body standing straight, eventually something would give and make me move. And that's what we're looking for. So when I'm into that fighting stance, imagine that pressure. So it's building up from both ends. And the first thing that will give up is gonna be the hip, which already activated my foot. And from there, I extend my jab, and then I recover back to the neutral stance. From that position, I'm going to release on the other side, so the hip will move, foot will give me the drive, and I'm going to extend with the opposite hand, and then I'm going right back to my fighting stance. Giving it from a side angle, hip activates the foot, which gives me a little bit of a lean. So right now I'm staying stacked. I got shoulder, hip, and heel in the same line, which gives me a very good solid position. Back foot is anchored, so then when I throw my jab, I'm meeting resistance, and I'm not gonna be pushed back from that resistance. And then I recover. From that position, going into the cross, hip will shift, my weight will shift forward, so I still wanna line up this shoulder with this hip and that heel. Going past it is when I'm gonna lose that balance and then lose the power in the punch. So I rotate only as far as the shoulder gets to that line, and then my hip sinks with the shoulder over the heel. I create my extension, and then I come right back to the fighting stance. The transition between the two becomes a little bit harder as you go a little bit faster, so we definitely lose some technique. But we want to be able to think about power and overwhelming. So if we train slow, we can kind of stay on it and get the movement. When we go a little bit faster, it just becomes more rotational. So you lose a little bit of that sinking behind the movement, but you stay sunk continuously. So I'm here and I'm just kind of rotating. The idea is that once I've created drive with the feet into the ground, I do not want to release that pressure. That's why I'm standing low and my body is constantly rotating and torquing, feeling and moving that drive back and forth through my punches. And another thing we have to be thinking about is why are we throwing a jab and a cross, and how do they relate in a real fight? And then how to break it down from that point. So working a jab and a cross, it is not so much that I'm working a combination and I'm moving, because the most common mistake is throwing the 2 punches, almost like traditional striking, where one hand starts to come back and the other one starts to come back forward at the same time. Well, at the middle, at that meeting point, I'm wide open to any attack. So against a skilled attacker, this is an opening for me that I do not want to give up. So the punches are generally done: 1 punch, recover, 2nd punch, recover. If we were to add on more punches, we still need that pause in between. But what happens is the pause, as we do more practice, becomes a little bit smaller. So the transition between 1 and 2 becomes more of 1 and 2, where I'm still doing 2 separate punches. What that teaches me is to not fully commit, but to also commit at the same time. To make a little more sense out of it, think of it as I'm wearing a fight. I commit to the jab, but now I have another punch coming in. If I'm committed to that cross, I'm not addressing the strike that's coming in for me to redefend or redirect so that I can counter properly. So creating a small pause allows me to assess what is happening. Maybe I missed, maybe my opponent slipped, maybe they moved away, maybe they did something, now they're coming back in with a strike. So getting that pause allows me to counter or do something and then follow up with my next punch. The concept stays the same. The more strikes we throw between, with the more pause in between, every pause we're working on is something that our attacker could be potentially throwing back at us, which is why we want to be thinking, even like in a 10 strike combo, we're using hands and feet, we want to be thinking still with the pauses in between. So I'm still going to go 1, pause, 2, pause, 3, pause, 4, pause, even if it's just the straight punches. That pause, once again, allows me to assess what is happening, making sure that I'm doing the right damage, and also if something is coming back at me, then I can defend it and redirect it and then still stay into the fight and keep myself safe.